Boker Tov, Boker Tov. So first of all, let me commend Avram Nadel for having made a chasna, Mazel Tov, yesterday afternoon and dancing deep into the night. And here he is at the shir in the morning. Probably could have danced all night. And his chassan was in shul this morning at Shacharis. That's somehow or another, that's a bit miraculous.
But unnatural to me.
Well, it shows you the madriga of Rivka.
My wife told them to go.
Yeah, so it shows you the madriga of Rivka Nadel. Yeah, see. That's the way it's supposed to be. And also, let me say that I made a mistake, I thought today, but tomorrow, our very, very good friend Yossi Klein is going in for a pretty difficult surgery, and I just want to. His name is Yosef Eliezer ben Sprinza, and you should have a refuah shalema. And let's just dedicate our learning today in the chus of his refuah shalema. So Indian to say to be masker the chusim of somebody. Yossi Klein is a man that doesn't waste a minute in life, and it's just every minute he's being either oisik in Torah or in Parnasa or in giving himself more koach to learn Torah, but he learns much more. I don't want to say anything bad, but much more than many kollel people. He learns and knows and does chazara every 120 days. Is like an amazing honor for us to have him in the shul. He's not a person who loses his temper or talks lashon hara. Nobody's a malach, so I don't want to make it more than it is, but it's pretty much. It's hard to imagine what a malach has got on him, actually. But so he should have a refuah shalema. A little nervous about it. Okay, I want to continue where I left off, but just a little bit before I left off, so we're back in the sugya, which is a sugya worth spending even two shiurim on, because it's so yesodistic, not just to Hilchas Chametz and Matzah, but it's really yesodistic to Choshen Mishpat and so many different halachas in the Torah, as we will learn. Hilchas Chametz and Matzah, Hilchas Kriyash, Hilchas Talmud Torah, Hilchas Trumas and Maasros, Hilchas Tshuva. And what begins here is that the Mishmeres says, let me just change the screen here, I'm sorry. Mishmeres says in Tuf Lamed Beis, Siman Aleph, Sifkatan Beis, he brings Lagabe the brachas of Bedikas Chametz and Bir Chametz. Bedikas Chametz is when you check with a candle, which we do this year on a Thursday night, and you make a bracha. And Bir Chametz is when we Bitul Chametz. Bitul Chametz is when you say Kol Chamira v'Chamia, and you get it out of your shus. So it says the Mishnah on these two things, that when you make a bracha on the Bedika, you don't make a bracha al Bir Chametz, even though that's really what you're doing. You make a bracha, you don't make a bracha al Bedikas Chametz, which is what you're doing. Ein mevarach al Bedikas Chametz, de'ein ze soif mitzvasei. Because the mitzvah that you're doing here is getting rid of chametz. It's not bedika is just a step towards the goal of getting rid of chametz. V'gam, what's more nogea to us right now, is ein mevarchen al bitul chametz, which is a mitzvah in the Torah to do. Why don't you make a bracha? So the answer, says the Mishnah, is kivan de ikar habitul talui balev. Meaning, I want to just translate those words, that true, we do stuff and we say stuff, kol chamira v'chamia dike bershusi. We sit, but the ikar of bitul chametz is balev. You do in your mind, in your heart. Ve'ein mevarchen al dvarim shebalev. And you don't make a bracha on any davar shebalev. So we're going to, what we started doing, and I'd like to continue doing, is to take apart that yesod of Ein Mevarchen al Dvarim Shebalev, which the Mishnah takes, even though he doesn't quote it here, he takes from Beis Yosef. This is in Tuf Lamed Beis. He takes it from the Beis Yosef and Tuf Lamed Vav, who takes it from the Torah. It's in I think it's Taf Lamed Tes, or at the end in Taf Lamed Vav. So the klal has to work through Kol HaTorah Kula, that we don't make a bracha on a davar shebelev. Let's just put it out here, Chazar or new things. What are different mitzvahs that we do belev that we don't make a bracha on, or we do make a bracha on?
Davening. Davar shebelev.
Davening, and we talk don't make a bracha on davening. So that works. We don't make a bracha on dvarim shebelev.
Loti Torah, loti tisna. I don't take a kama.
That's a
lav.
Yeah, that's a lav. That's you're not doing.
Yeah.
You have a different klal. We don't make a bracha on tshuva. Tshuva, according to the Rambam, it says mitzvah aseh deraisa, hashivaisa levavecha, and Pashta says you don't make a bracha on it because it's a davar shebelev. So, in the mitzvah of Bitul Chametz, so there's two major opinions in the Rishonim. What are you doing when you do Bitul Chametz? So Rashi says, and I understand this a little better than I understood it last week. Rashi says that the mitzvah of Bitul Chametz is the mitzvah called, the name of that mitzvah is Tashbisu. Not only that's the name of the mitzvah, this is what's important, take note, not only is it the name of the mitzvah, but it's the technology of the mitzvah. The way you do this mitzvah of Bitul Chametz is Tashbisu, meaning that you're Makayim the mitzvah of Tashbisu and you're doing a Tashbisu. What in the world is a Tashbisu? Tosfos asks many kashas on Rashi, and he says no such thing as Tashbisu. What you're doing basically is you're being mafkir your chametz. That's all. Like, in other words, it's not a new instrument called tashbisu. It's algemeins. It's a regular legal instrument that we use of relinquishing title from a proper ownership of a property, which I pointed out last week is not so clear according to Dinah de Malchusa that there's even such a thing as relinquishing ownership. So we would have a problem of Dinah de Malchusa Dinah, because Dinah de Malchusa Dinah tells us who owns what. But nevertheless, that's what Tosfos says, that it's that what it means Bitul Chametz, it means that you're being mafkir your chametz, just like you could be mafkir your house or mafkir your nechasim. You can be mafkir whatever you want, so you mafkir your chametz. What I said I understand a little bit better this week than last week is that, like, what is, I mean, if it's not hefker, what is Rashi saying it is? What is this instrument called tashbisu? And there's a lot to say about it, but I just want to say one simple thing, that there's a mechanism where we can say that, you think this is a pen? It's not a pen. It's afar dara. It's nothing. Now, that's what tashbisu is. I'm taking the chametz to ika b'shusi, kol chamira v'chamia the ika b'shusi, and I'm saying both things actually. That have a hefker, v'libatel ka'afar dara. That's the nusach. So hefker, we understand. You're making a hefker, taking any chametz that I have, making a hefker. But how do you make something ka'afar dara? What kind of a magical trick is that? That's ka'afar dara. It's not afar dara. It's a pen. So I saw something which made me realize that it's not so magic. What it means is, this is just very important you say to understand. I think what it means is that you say with your dibur or your machshava that something is ka'afar da'ara. What it really means is that I personally, I wish this thing didn't even exist in this world. In other words, what you're saying is, in my mind, this is garnished, right? Well, chasarli, and on the contrary, I just wish it didn't exist. And you find this kind of bittul, by the way, by a number of things. There's an Indian of bittul, which is not for now in the halachas of avodah zarah, that you can do bittul on something. But there's a bittul of taivas in the Sifrei Musar. But what we're saying is that somehow or another, it's still magical. But and I don't know if there's a secular equivalent to this type of an idea, but I can take something which everybody would consider to have value, and in my mind, it has no value. It's afar da'ara, it's just afar. And somehow by me thinking and saying that this is afar da'ara, it becomes afar da'ara, somehow. And I'd like to explain how that works. But that's the pshat in Rashi. Tashbisu sarmi batechem. Tashbisu sarmi batechem means the hashbasa is not that I'm making it hefker. Hefker implies, just want you to understand it. Hefker implies that it's a pen. But I'm taking the pen, I'm making a hefker. I'm putting it on the curbside. Anybody wants to take the pen can take the pen. That's hefker. But it blives a pen. Here we're saying that no. In my mind, I'm not saying that it's not a pen, but in my mind, that's not a pen. It's nothing to me. So it's gaffer dara. So just somebody is allowed to come, let's say, to my stender and shul and say, I want that dust. He doesn't have to ask for shus, right? Or you could go into a garbage can and the person throws something away. He considers it junk. So it's not hefker. When you put something in the trash bin, it's not necessarily from the lumdus of hefker. It could be from the lumdus of bittul that it's kafir dara. And anything, here's the nakuda here. Anything which in my mind is afra da'ara, I don't own. I don't really have bailus in the dust in my house or the dirt on my car. So I don't have bailus in that. So why? Because in order for something to have bailus, I got to be machshavit as at least a shavapruta in my mind. But the minute I'm taking it and I'm making kafir dara, it's a very deep lumdus that Rashi is saying over here. The tashbisu is a din bifnei atzmei, which doesn't require the din of hefker. Yeah, everybody understand this? I'm making it kafir dara. In my mind, I wish it didn't even exist. I'm not machshavit. I don't like it. I don't hold of it. It's kafir dara, batul kafir dara. As opposed to Taisvus, which says it is something, but I have to take it out of my rishus.
If it's belev, how does saying words about something which is you have $1 million worth of whiskey, you say it's afar da'ara, how does the saying affect your lev if it's devarim shebelev?
I don't know if it does. Why are you making an assumption that saying it without thinking it doesn't work? Maybe the pshat is you just have to say what you're thinking. Which we have to speak about. Shelve the very good question for a few minutes, because but who says that saying kol chamira v'chamia is anything? If the Mishnah Berurah here is telling us that the ikar bittul is a very important lashon. I mean, Mishnah Berurah is addressing your point. He says ein mevarchen al bitul chametz, the ikar habittul talui belev. So it means that if you have dibur and you don't have leiv, it's doch garnish gemach. What did you do? You didn't do it. You didn't do any bittul if you just said words. There's no hocus pocus here.
I have a question. I'm not sure it will help or hinder. There's a difference. Hey, I know. There's a difference between ba'alut, ownership, and chazakah, possession. In America, in the Western world, possession is 9/10 of the law, but possession doesn't automatically imply ownership. So an item can be in my possession, but I don't own it. I'm wondering if that makes a difference in terms of the intent of bittul. Being mafkir something, hefker, means taking it out of my ownership, I believe. I could be wrong, but I believe that's what it means. And I'm making it available to anyone who may want it, even if it's still in my possession.
I think what you're saying here, Ephraim, is both helping and hindering. But let me just explain something, which is, I think, the pashtus of halachah, and that is the chazaka in general, possession, as you call it, chazaka, doesn't mean anything except that if there's a suffix, it's mevarer, meaning hamaitzi mechaverei olav haraya means that I have a chazaka and you don't have a chazaka. So now you're saying that this pen belongs to you. Bring a raya. Why? Because of chazaka, not the chazaka. Very, very important point. Chazaka is a birur, a way of doing a birur of a suffix, just like roiv is a birur of a suffix. Roiv is not any kind of possession, but roiv says if a person's walking down the street and he's wearing a suit, or he's driving a car, probably it's his car. So if you don't know when there's a latest hasafik, we go basar chazaka because the chazaka is telling you, like Roiv is telling you, Roiv and chazaka work with a similar lumdus, that is telling you that probably, it's just telling you probably, but it doesn't, possession is not 9/10 or 1/10 of the law. All it does is it puts the burden of proof on you. That's all it does. Okay, let's go further. I'm doing a review of last week, but I'm clarifying a number of things on the way, so take heed. The big makor, if you will, that all the achronim bring, I thought it was just Rebbe Kiveger, but all the achronim bring that to argue with this point that you can make a bracha on dvarim shebalev is hafrosh, a simple sif in Shulchan Aruch, which is a Mishnah actually, of hafroshas truma b'Shabbos. Right? Everybody knows that you can't be mafresh truma on Shabbos because it's tikkun mana and kinyanim, etc. But if you're giving it to the kohen. However, let's say you're eating your meal and you realize that you didn't take off trumas and maestros. So the halacha is you're mafresh b'machshava. You make a bracha, hafrashas truma. You're mafresh b'machshava. You don't say anything. You don't do anything. And this halacha, which is probably not going to be nogea to many of us in our lifetime, but this halacha of hafrashas truma dafke b'machshava, because with daber davar you can't do it b'dibur on Shabbos, it became the lamdishim makar for making a bracha on a davar shebalev. You see, you're making a bracha on something b'machshava. So that simple halacha doesn't have to be a nogea halacha, but from that halacha we see not like the Bishtabur is saying and the Beis Yosef is saying, the Torah is saying that you can make a bracha on a davar shebalev. So Rabbi Kiveger is one of those that asked this question, but I tell you that it's the Gra and the Rebbe Yehuda and the Chassam Sofer and everybody's questioning the klal yashas of when you make a bracha from this halacha truma. But Rabbi Kiveger says the following. This is lashon in the Shilos and Shuvas. Hoyolu Toras hafrashas truma he litna l'kain. What's the whole, like, yes, you're doing it b'machshava, but the whole point of it is that you want the kohen to end up with this truma. So af hamafresh ayidei machshava hareza kois adavar sheyesh by ma'isa. So it's like soif ma'isa b'machshava tchila. That yes, it's b'machshava, but the machshava has to come l'ma'isa. And if it doesn't come l'maisa, then it's a karnish kitan. You didn't do anything. So mamela, it's called, the machshava is not called the davar shebalev, says Rebbe Kiveger. The machshava is called the beginning of a maisa. Why? Kivin shesoifai lavai lidei maisa. Koloimer anasina l'kain. However, and this is the lashon of Rebbe Kiveger, avol b'bitul chametz nasa kol b'machshavas halev. Kehillat sof. Whole thing is machshavas halev. I ask Sitzat Samet, we have to say kol chamira v'chamia de'ikar b'rshusay. Seder you have to say, but that's not Bitul Chametz. Bitul Chametz is what you're doing belev. Yes? So says Rebbe Kiveger. Okay. So it comes back, going back to what we were talking about, the mitzvah of Bitul.
Rabbi Haber.
Yeah.
When he said Bitul Balev, doesn't that do make some kind of accomplishment? Why is it not also just like by Truma? It's true, it's going to come to the hands of the Kohen at some point will be allowed, but also Bitul means that he fulfilled not having chametz.
There's mitzvahs that you do b'leiv, and there's mitzvahs you do b'dibur, and there's mitzvahs you do b'maisa. So he's saying is Bitul Chametz a mitzvah you do b'leiv. Not that it's not that you're not accomplishing a great thing. You're kind of a mitzvah tashbisu. But if it's a mitzvah which really is done completely b'leiv, and the dibur is like a side thing ba'alma, so then you don't make a bracha, as Rabbi Yaacov Haber says. Mashen came by truma, the machshav itself does not finish the maisa. It does not finish the mitzvah. You haven't been mekayim one of the taryag mitzvahs. So how do you make a bracha on it? Because seifa you love elidei maisa. That's what he says. Let me let's ask Shmuel's question a little bit different. Or just go even deeper. Why can't you make a bracha on a davar shebalev? Like what? Ma'abaya. Like make a bracha on davar shebalev. That's a mitzvah. I did the mitzvah. Well, you're depriving me of making a bracha on it. Like what is that klal for? I'm supposed to do what I did, and I did what I did. And the truth is, I've actually done something with my leiv. I've actually taken out of my rishus, or either I've taken out of my rishus by tashbisu, as we explained, or I took it out of my rishus by making it hefker. But I made, like as they would call in the yeshivish world, I did make a chalais din hefker, or a chalais din of so I did something. So if I did something, why don't I make a bracha? That's what I'm trying to understand better. So the Mishnah Berurah here adds, the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim sort of asks something like that. He says, Mishnah Berurah says in Taf Lamed Dalet Sivkot Tesvav, she'amnam bitul chametz mitam hefker, ach mikol makom eino oisei chalois hefker b'chametz. The Mashmai says that what does chalois mean? How would you define a chalois hefker b'chametz? Let's not skip over it as we did when we were kids. Let's think about it for a minute. What does that mean? That there's a maisa, there's a chalois. So what does it mean? Simple English. Ephraim, what does it mean? Chalois din. No, I don't hear you. Push the space bar.
I think it means making it effective, making it actual.
So you've actually changed the item. That's the way I understand it. In other words, it was chalais, a chalais din. So the Mishnah Berurah says, let's keep that up. Making it, I don't know what making it effective means. I just don't know what those words mean. But let's say did my machshava actually make a chiluk, make a hefdel in this chametz? So the Mishnah Berurah says, amnam bitul chametz mitam hefker, ach mikol makom eino eisach halois hefker b'chametz. Meaning, just want to point this out here, that if you do make something hefker, forget about chametz. If you do make something hefker, you have changed the property of this, the ownership of this item. If I make this hefker, so now I've changed it. I have made a chalais din. So why haven't I made a chalais din on chametz, and why isn't that allowed me to make a bracha? So says the Mishnah Berurah in Taf Lamed Dalet Sivkot Tesvav, Elakivan she'achametz einoi b'rshusai, comes up with another knech, that be'etzem chametz is einoi b'rshusai shel adam. Just that the Torah told me I have to take responsibility for the chametz. Tashbisu sar mibatechem. So the Mishnah Berurah is telling us, whoa, there's a whole different legal mechanism that's going on over here, and it's hefker, but it's not exactly hefker. It's a new thing. And what's the new thing? That really, the Torah says something is usher. So something like this, like when the Torah says, or for that matter, the secular law says, like you absolutely cannot use this. You cannot touch it. You cannot do anything with it. You cannot sell it. You can't do anything with it. So at least from if that's the truth, so there's some kind of a contraband. So then halachically, I have no bilus in it. I don't own it. Why? Because the definition of ownership is that I can use it for something. I can transfer it. I could sell it. I could eat it. I could do something. So if I have absolutely, like hektish, like let's say you say hareza hektish, I don't have bilus. It belongs now to the Beis Hamikdash. Why? Because the rega I say hareza hektish, I've assered my whole bilus from the thing, and therefore I don't own it anymore. And therefore, you can have a sugya, which you're probably familiar with, of takfa kain. I have no ishtamshus. The word that the Ksais uses, I have no ishtamshus in the chayfetz any longer. So says the Mishnah Berurah that the truth is that the Torah already took chametz out of your rishus. Why? Because chametz aser completely aser b'achila, aser b'ana, aser b'bayira, b'yamatzei. There's nothing I can do with this chametz. Nothing. So what kind of bilus do I have? Elo, says the Gemara in Pesachim, that a Torah nasna b'rshusai. The Torah says no. You don't have bilus, but you do have responsibility. And there's only two things like that: chametz and a bar b'rshus harabim. You do have a responsibility, even though it's not yours. So since the Torah wants to put it back in my rishus, what am I doing when I do Bitul Chametz, says the Mishnah Berurah? I'm saying, don't put it in my rishus. I don't want it. So even though relinquishing ownership of something, says the Mishnah Berurah, would be a thing, a chalois din, hefker, but not accepting ownership, no, I don't want that gift. I don't want it. And that's what I'm saying. Kol chamir v'chamir, I'm thinking doing gar belev. That's not called a chalois din. The chalois din is already there. So to stop a chalois din, from falling on the chametz, that you don't make a bracha on. The garnish katan. All you're doing is saying that you don't want something in your rishus. Let me take this a couple of steps further, please.
Rabbi Haber.
Yeah.
I'd like to get it clear. You're saying that in the end, Bitul, just doing Bitul, you're not doing a chalos din, you're just stopping a chalos din?
That's what the Mishnah Berurah says.
Stopping.
You're not making a chalos din, you're stopping a chalos din. It would come back into your rishus, and you're saying, whoa, I don't want that in my rishus. And that's what Bitul Chametz is. Now, if I'm not, who might have questioned the Mishnah Berurah? But I'm just wondering about the Mishnah Berurah because, first of all, Tosfos calls it hefker. So you have to say that there's a new kind of hefker, not a hefker of something which is in my rishus going out of my rishus, but a new type of hefker where something doesn't go to my rishus to begin with. Second of all, Rashi calls it tashmisu, that I'm making it kafir da'ara. So what's it mean I'm making it kafir da'ara if all I'm doing is stopping it from going in my rishus? So I can understand a little bit that. Like, in other words, I'm saying that I don't want this. This is dust. What are you bringing dust? What are you bringing? Wipe your feet before you come into this house. So,
Also, it's still in your shoes. You're making the declaration before the Zman Isser.
I know, but you're not going to have. It's true, but that's a technical point. The point is that when the Zman Isser comes, it won't go into my rishus. It only goes into your rishus by the Zman Isser also. So you do this preventative measure before the Zman. That's all.
So for that, you need less of a Libo Shavin, perhaps, than for some type of hefker, some other type of statement where if your heart was really against what your mouth is saying, then there's a question of it's really chal. There's no chalos here. You might need less of a less kavana. Is that possible?
I mamish don't know what you're talking about, but what it's a very simple thing.
What I asked before.
It's right. It's a very simple thing that before the time comes where the chametz goes into my rishus, I make a proclamation in my heart and my mind that I don't want this to come. Like at 11:12, to 11 and 12 minutes, this chametz is going to come into my rishus. I'm saying right now, don't bring it in here. I don't want it as part of my life. So that's the mitzvah tashbisu, and so I'm making no chalais. I have no connection with that chametz ever, because gitech v'yadech boin kacha. It's like as soon as you come into my rishus, you're not in my rishus. So that's why. So that would be. So that means ein mevarchen al bitul chametz. When the Mishmeres here says ein mevarchen al bitul chametz, what he means is you're not really doing anything with this bitul chametz. So as opposed to Hafrashas Truma, where you are doing something, and you can make a bracha, but over here by chametz you're not doing anything. You're just stopping it from coming to your rishus. You don't make a bracha on stopping something from coming into your rishus. Now I just want to test the theory to make sure we all understand it. Scheinberg asked the following question based on everything. He didn't say anything that we just said, but he asked this question. He says, the kasha mihad pasuk hagra b'biurai siman mem zayin the bir hagra siman mem zayin. That's hilchos birchas haTorah. So the gra says a chiddush, and we should know this chiddush. The mevarchen birchas haTorah al hirhur divrei Torah. Let me explain that according to many Rishonim, and that's how the Rav Shulchan Aruch paskins, you're only makayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah if you speak the Torah, dibur. According to the Gra, you're makayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah by thinking in Torah. If I have machshava of Torah here, Mamela, by the way, it comes out two different nuschais in the siddur. So, like if you look in a Lubavitcher siddur, it says Asher kichanu b'mitzvayis v'tzivanu al divrei Torah. Right? Divrei is dvarim. Or lasik b'divrei Torah. I don't remember the lashon, but al divrei Torah. It said no, it's al divrei Torah. And what do we say in the morning?
Awesome.
Huh?
Lasok b'divrei Torah.
Lasok b'divrei Torah. So that's because we're going with the gra, that you can make a bracha on the asek of Torah and not necessarily on diburim of Torah. So where the Rav Shulchan Aruch holds, side thing, where the Rav Shulchan Aruch holds that the mitzvah is to speak Torah, Amar Rava, Amar Abaya, Amar Rav Chisda, you have to speak out the Torah. So the Gra says you don't have to speak out the Torah, you just have to think the Torah. Maybe it's a good idea. Arichas Vasayim, it's a Mishnah in Parak Vav of Pirkei Avos. Maybe it's a good thing maybe it's a good way of understanding or memorizing. But you don't have to speak Torah. You can make a bracha lasik b'divrei Torah. It says a Gra. If you can make a bracha on hirhur divrei Torah. So the Rosh Yeshiva asked if you can make a bracha on hirhur divrei Torah. So l'chayr you're making a bracha on dvarim shebelev. Mishmeres says in Hilchos Chametz that you don't make a bracha on Bitul Chametz because ein mevarchen al dvarim shebelev. And okay, so you could say like a drasha that well, I'm supposed to do something with my Torah, like I'm not supposed to just learn it, but that's not true. Learning Torah is an end unto itself. It's not like Hafrashas Truma where you don't give it to the Truma. That Hafrashas Truma where you don't give it to the Kohen is like writing a check to tzedakah for $1 million and never giving it to anyone. So garnish. But Talmud Torah in your head is a mitzvah according to the Gra, which is Halachah didan, where you have to. So that's why, by the way, if you go into a Litvish yeshiva, so people are thinking and learning. And if you go into a Hasidic yeshiva or a Lubavitcher yeshiva, there's no such thing almost. It's all you got to talk. So why isn't that making a bracha on Dvarim Shibalev? That's the question. Now, according to everything we know now, we're a big Talmidei Chachamim, he says here, V'cholak al shar paiskim d'sayver in the ein mevarach and birchas haTorah elim kein maitzi divrei Torah repeat. V'lefi klal habeis Yosef hanal, which is the Mishnah Berurah, eich shaykh levarach birchas haTorah al hir divrei Torah or havi belev. Unehi there's a mitzvah lahar divrei Torah, and it's a mitzvah to be mahar and divrei Torah milchsi v'gisa b'yayim v'layla. That's the Gras pasuk. Ha layadiv mi bitul chametz. Yes, it's a mitzvah, but what's it different than Bitul Chametz? The Gabgate mitzvah. Afilu hachi ein mevarchen alal mishum dahavi belev, ein mevarchen al davar shebelev. Yeah? So who's got the answer?
Even Hirurim of Torah change the person physically.
There's a chalois.
Yeah.
Right. So good. So before we let me say that in my words, but yes. But let's just take a couple of examples. Avram Nadel asked a question last week, or pointed out last week, that we don't say, like I said, we say Birchos Kriyas Shema, we say a bracha on Kriyas Shema. But do we say a bracha on Kriyas Shema? Really? Nobody's saying Asher Kitchanu Mitzvah Tzivanu al Kriyas Shema. We don't say bracha on Kriyas Shema. Why? Why not? That takes dibur and everything. So the pshat there is, right? You hear my question? Like, why don't you make a bracha on Kriyas Shema when you have to lane Kriyas Shema? You have to have a dibur of Kriyas Shema. And the answer is that true, that Rav Chisda in the Gemara learns out from Sukkim that Hakorei Shema tzarech la'ashmi'a la'oznai, and that means that it requires, what is la'ashmi'a la'oznai? I mean, you have to hear it with your own ears, l'chol ha'pachas. Why? Because otherwise it's not dibur, and it says v'dibarta bam, right? V'dibarta bam, that's what Rav Chisda says. And the definition of dibur is not moving your lips. The definition of dibur is la'ashmi'a, that you've created something that at least your ear can hear. So even though that's a din in Kriyas Shema, but what's actually the mitzvah of Kriyas Shema? What's the mitzvah of Kriyas Shema? Kabbalah Zol Malchus Shemayim. And that begins and it ends in the heart. So Mela, that's what you have to say. So there's a chiddush here in Kriyas Shema that it's true you have to say it, but saying it, you have to laning Kriyas Shema is a t'nai in the Kriyas Shema, but it's not the Kriyas Shema. The Kriyas Shema, when we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, is Kabbalah Zol Malchus Shemayim. Clear. Which has a big nafkamina, Yitzchak L'maisa, because it means to say, according to that, let's say you say Kriyas Shema, but you're not Makabel Malchus Shemayim. So you're Makabel V'dibarta Bam, but you didn't do the mitzvah of Kriyas Shema. And let's say you were Makabel Ol Malchus Shemayim and you didn't have dibur. So we have in Shulchan Aruch Mefurish that if it's Higia Zman Kriyas Shema, and let's say you're in a Makkah Metunaf or in a Makkah Meluchlach, so according to many opinions, you should be Maharer in Kriyas Shema. You should say Belev. Why? Be Makabel Ol Malchus Shemayim, which is for sure true by Divrei Torah, which is one of the Gros Rayas. But it's important to note that Kriyas Shema, the whole thing is something you do, Kabbalah Zol Malchus Shemayim, and that's why we don't make a bracha. Why don't we make a bracha on tshuva? Tshuva. Anybody there?
Well, there's no discrete act that you can point to. I mean, even
what about
vidui? Even well,
right. So there is. I saw here.
So how would you make a bracha if you don't know whether you accomplished it or not? We don't have a way of determining that you definitely accomplished tshuva.
And vidui is only one part of the process of tshuva.
Make a bracha on the vidui. Look, there's a lot of things we set out to do, and you don't know if you're going to be matzliach. You make a bracha. There's a million things that could happen between making a bracha and yeah. It's like the famous bad joke about a guy who was going to be killed al Kiddush Hashem, and he makes the bracha. And then the guy's decided not to kill him, and he's going, no, hefsek. Okay. still Adar. So I saw here in the Pardes Yosef, it's a Valduka Sefer, it's about 20 volumes long, on Parshas Achri Mois, and he says here, the Iker Tshuva who, what is Tshuva? Iker Tshuva who believe. That's why. Iker Tshuva who believe, shemischaret al chatoiv, umekabel alav shaloi yashuv lakisla oid. HaRav, the most famous Gemara about Tshuva is that somebody's Makadosh and Isha al Menasha Nitzad Gomer Afal Pishu Rasha Gomer Choshin LaKedushin. Why? Because maybe Dilma also Tshuva, right? Dilma hear her but Tshuva. So you see, so one simple thing you can learn from that Gemara is that even just to hear her of Tshuva accomplishes Tshuva. So you see from here, says the Pardes Yosef, that Tshuva is a davar shebelev. So he says the Pardes Yosef, Kide Matzino Bebeis Yosef in Hilchos Chametz, Tav Lamed Beis, Dibar Maskol Rabbeinu. The Hainu Taima Shetiknu Levarach al Bedikas Chametz Shumi Divrei, like Tiknu Levarach al Bitul Shumi Torah, Mishum the Bitul who believe Ein Mevarach and al Dvarim Shebelev. So since we have a Makar, says the Pardes Yosef, that you don't make a bracha on a Davar Shebelev. And what's the Makar? Bitul Chametz. So therefore, we have to say that that's why you don't make a bracha on Tshuva. So even though Tshuva does require vidui, so now we have to say a new chiddush here. Rabbi is saying, hear me out clearly, I only have a minute or two to go. That when it comes to saying kol chamira v'chamia, when it comes to Kriya Shema, speaking it out, and when it comes to vidui, Hashamnu Bagadnu Gazalnu, all those things, all they're doing, even though it's a din, you have to do it, is their megala dvarim shebelev. So when I do Bitul Chametz, I'm doing it belev. When I daven, I'm doing it belev, right? When I'm saying Kriya Shema, I'm saying it belev Kabbalah Sol Malchus Shemayim. When I'm doing Tshuva, it's all leiv. These are all dvarim shebelev. There's a din that you have to speak it out. You have to say Kol Chamir V'Chamir B'Seder, or you have to say the words of Kriya Shema, or you have to even say Vidui. It comes out that Vidui, here's a tremendous chiddush, that Vidui is not like part, according to this, is not part of Tshuva. It's like the Rambam says, by the way, the Rambam says this Lashon Meforsh, you have to do Tshuva, Charat al Avar, Kabbalah al Asid, all the things, and then Yigmar B'Svasav Mashagamar B'Daitoi. Then you say with your lips what you thought. But in other words, the dibur is only being megala, the dvarim shebelev. So let me say this. Masha'in Kain, what isn't the case is by Torah. You're not speaking the Torah to be megala the Torah, saying the Torah is itself, I mean, learning Torah has its own asiyah and its own chalois kedusha. I want to remind everybody who learns with me, the Nefesh Chaim. We'll end with this, and it'll be our segue to Nefesh Chaim on Thursday. Listen to this Nefesh Chaim. This is in Shar Beis Perek Daled. Inyan habracha. What is a bracha? Pirushay hu toisefes v'riboy mamish kemashmoi. Bracha, like toisefes v'riboy. Shezehu ritzayno yisbarach mitam kamos ita yisbarach. That Hashem wants not just Philip, you to change, wants the whole world to change. Shenesakenu niyached al yedei brachas v'atzfilos hakoiches v'hailamis el yonim. You're actually mesaking the whole universe and all the Kabbalistic hailamis also. Shiu muchanim uruyim l'kabel shifas kedushas or el yoin, so that they can be makabel shefa. So lahamshich olahaisabem kedushas or v'roiv habrachos me'atzmusa yisparach. What happens when you make a bracha on something, or you do a mitzvah of some sort, which is the certain type of mitzvah, as you're opening up that heart or mind, neshama, even thing, into being a receptor for the or elyon. And that's why it's called bracha, because you're creating bracha in the world, ukadusha. This is particularly the job of Jews, to bring or into the world. And that's what bracha means. You're bringing bracha into the world. The or lagoyim. So it comes out that to be medama Bitul Chametz to Talmud Torah is no dimion, for all the reasons we said. By Bitul Chametz, the main thing is that I'm keeping something out of my rishus, or some other magic formula where I'm making it ka'avra da'ara, or even I'm making it hefker. However you learn the lumdas, we learned all the three lumdas. But you're not interested in making a chalois din in the chametz, you're making a chalois din in yourself, or you're not making any chalois din at all. The chalois din was there already, as Shmuel said. The chalois din was there already. Mashen came Torah, and according to the Gra here, her b'divrei Torah, it's all about making a chalois din in this world. The whole Torah is to make a chalois din in this world. You're mashana this world, you're mashana the worlds above us, you're mashana yourself, you're mashana everything involved. When you're just, says the Gra, mahar her b'divrei Torah. So of course you make a bracha on divrei Torah. And what about Kriya Shema? So the Kabbalah Zot Malchus Shemayim mashma, and a chanami, it's Gomar Belev, but it doesn't make the same chalois din, the same shinui in the world. It's something I have to do as an individual. I have to do Kabbalah Zot Malchus Shemayim, but it's not making a chalois. It's not making a change, and Mamela, you don't make a bracha. Okay, I want to end reasonably in time. Thank you for listening.